Thousands of years before the reign of the first pharaohs, Egypt was ruled by gods. So says the legend, the reliability of which ancient Egyptians never doubted. They simply knew it. Ancient Egyptian civilization, which we know, and which was generated in the end of 4th, beginning of 3rd millennium BC, is only a hat. A hat covering a heritage of more ancient civilization. I do not know who was the first to maintain it, but I add here the assumption that the Egyptian civilization had been created with one basic purpose: to hide the heritage of a more ancient civilization. It was a tremendously large-scale historical operation aimed to last for centuries and even millennia. The fact that we deal with a highly developed civilization, it is the fact that we cannot ignore. We've seen not separate pieces, but tens and hundreds of artifacts in the shape of perfectly made concentric circles, cavities, the plates with the surface polished at the 2nd, the 3rd order, and even the 4th and higher. It was impossible to make it manually. Thus it is evident they used highest quality techniques. To reject it simply means to reject the obvious. And what we see here is not a game. Perfectly equal surface in a curve, and lengthways it's all as perfectly precise. I wonder how they could do it without the tools we have now. To put it more precisely, it's impossible to do it without modern tools. Here they were cutting with discs or strips, most likely with discs. It was approximately a 3-meter disc, 2.5 or a 3-meter disc. You see a saw cut 2 or 3 millimeters wide, and it's not cut to the end, only till here. The ledge on the edge of an equal surface looks like a byproduct which remained after the manufacturing of cubes, but if it's true, they could have been made up to the technology of stone molding, when a stone is heated up to molten state. We've got the impression that builders leveled the floor after it had been laid just as we scrape wooden floors. The only difference is that they worked with black basalt. To make the same, we would have to take a numerically controlled grinding machine to a desert, but there are no tools of the appropriate size even nowadays. This is the edge of the rock where the bridge had been excavated. It's as high as a multi-storied building. Under a small cornice, there is a kind of a wall which is perfectly flat. What type of a huge combine could have left such a trace? Nowadays, a similar effect could be attained during the work of a plasma torch. It needs a powerful stream of air under strong pressure, and temperature of a flame shall be about 1000 degrees. When it comes clear to you that ancient Egyptians couldn't make it, you start asking a question: who was he who made it? When you study these objects attentively, you come to a conclusion that these were people who possessed perfect tools, technologies, and highly developed knowledge. Almost 2000 years ago, people knew that there existed another civilization before them. They even tried to find the knowledge which had been left since those times. Actually, this hole here shows that it's useless to speak about the Tomb Raiders. It's only a silly invention. You can see that it's indeed impossible to carry out of here big amount of stones secretly, as in case of raiders. These were the pre-arranged works. They were searching here for something. Probably Seti I, the pharaoh of the New Kingdom, had found something of the ancient heritage. There are images in his temple in Abydos, the details of which have long ago inspired very hot discussions. There have always been people who kept a secret knowledge. And in general, I think, everyone will agree that these people were priests. A castle of priests, which had survived through all the ancient Egyptian civilization and had not been destroyed even during the Greco-Roman period. To understand how and why this or that object was actually created, it is necessary to forget about primitive technologies of manual skills of thousand slaves, to look at the real facts from the point of view of logic and common sense, and so we can really come closer to the knowledge of ancient gods. So we climbed up this Heffron, and I tell you what, guys, I do not recommend the experience. Because the thing is all loose, it's absolutely all decayed. So climbing it is wrong. Basically, it's not a problem. But tumbling down is not a problem either. The facing was placed next to a pyramid, and not only for decoration or protection as we are used to do. It worked as a strength member. It uses different construction logic. Not a rigid inner carcass, but an outer shell, just like a beetle. Strong chitin shell instead of a skeleton. The next block was placed back to back and two saws were run, or one wide blade saw, and as the laws of geometry had it, their sides become perfectly parallel. They only had to move this block over here. As a result, we have the most perfect joint, which leaves the scientists astounded. But to be able to do so, one needs a tool which cuts through granite as if it were butter, and besides, one has to move these multi-ton blocks as if they were some light-weighted plastic cubes. The most important thing here is probably the understanding of where the civilization which built these monuments had left. Was it by chance, or is it a pattern for evolvement of civilizations? If it was by chance, then we are probably approaching the level they had once reached, and so it's time for us to think of what's going to happen with ourselves. If it was a pattern, then we should probably start preparing for the same departure and decline, so that we leave something behind for generations who will follow 10 or 100,000 years after.